Okay, now let's begin. Before we get started, in the spirit of reconciliation, Alongside Families would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea, and community. We pay our respects to their elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. My name is Kelly, and I'm joining you from the lands of the Darug people today. And you are welcome to share the name of the country you're joining on in the chat. Today, we will hear from Rachel Callandar. Now, Rachel brings a unique and powerful perspective to her work, shaped by her background as an artist and her experience as a mother of her late daughter, Evie, who was born with a rare condition. Alongside this lived experience, Rachel has spent hundreds of hours working with healthcare professionals, educators, and caregivers around the world. Her work focuses on practical, actionable strategies that strengthen communication and create meaningful change across healthcare, education, and disability sector. At the heart of everything she does is a commitment to human-centered care and a strong belief that systems should support the well-being of everyone involved, something very close to my heart. Rachel is a speaker, a trainer, and an award-winning author and artist, and we're so pleased to have her join us today. So, in this first webinar, we will discuss understanding how communication works in healthcare and learning practical frameworks like the health language matrix to help make sense of what you're hearing when you're attending those appointments. And building simple, effective ways to ask questions and reframe that information so that you feel clearer and more confident in those conversations. So, without further ado, and I'm very excited to introduce Rachel to you all, and I'm going to hand it over to her now. Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you so much, Kelly, and it is lovely to see some names popping in the room. I can't see any faces, so I'm just imagining you all in your various parts of Australia and the world joining in. It's lovely to have you here. I'm joining you from Perth, or Wajak Noongar Boodja. I'm originally from New Zealand, but I am very happy to be living in Australia. I'm going to get straight into it because I know we don't have much time. So I do have a presentation to share. So I'll just get that on. I'll get that going while Kelly navigates that. Thank you, Kelly. Let's see. Hopefully this will work. Oh my goodness. No, it's not. Um, Hold please, callers. You know how you test all these things and then you go to do the thing and it's not there and all the rest.
Yep.
That is the situation I find myself in. I'm so sorry, everybody. I'm going to try that again. Here it is. But share. Alrighty. Hopefully you
Awesome.
can see that.
We can. Wonderful.
Okay, I'm just going to get this on the right process. There we go. So this is me. Um, and this is what we're going to be talking about, the impact of language in healthcare. And I am a lot like many of you, I guess. You know, you have children who are medically complex, or they might have been given a very significant diagnosis. You would have been surrounded by maybe big, scary words and a lot of uncertainty. And that was exactly my space on the 30th of March 2008 when my little daughter Evie was born. This is a photograph of her just a few hours old. I had never expected to fall in love so powerfully and quickly with another little human being, and I'm sure many of you had that same experience. But that wonder and delight of being a new parent quickly turned into a lot of fear and chaos when we tried to feed her right after she was born, and she couldn't latch, and so we tried feeding her by syringe, and I remember her just kind of choking and vomiting, and the nurse grabbing this tiny little bundle out of my arms and then rushing out the door. Now, Evie had been born by cesarean birth, and so I physically couldn't move, and I spent a very long, lonely night by myself in the hospital, wondering what the heck was going on with my child, and wondering if she was okay, and the unfamiliar environment of the hospital, and being in pain, and being uncomfortable, and not sleeping very well, and all of the emotional exhaustion that comes with unexpected things happening. And it was in that uncertain space that the next morning when the pediatrician and our midwife came to see us, they told my husband and I that they'd done some tests overnight on Evie and they were really concerned about her. And they told us that they thought she had a chromosomal condition that was incompatible with life. And I just remember hearing that phrase, incompatible with life. And I thought, oh my gosh, that sounds really serious. Like, is she okay? Like, that sounds really bad. And they said, well, no, she's okay for now, but if she does survive, which is highly unlikely, she will have severe mental retardation. She has skeletal abnormalities. She has congenital defects. She has multiple ventricular septal defects, and we think she has a condition called trisomy 18. And I just remember feeling this overwhelmed chaos of words. Like I heard incompatible, abnormal, retarded, defective. And I was thinking, wait a minute, are you describing the same beautiful little person that I met yesterday when she was born? I saw her as someone so beautiful and full of potential in the world. And the language of this medicine, this diagnosis language, didn't seem to feel like it was describing a human being. And I'd never heard the word trisomy. I don't know about you guys, but I thought that this person who was speaking to me, like he had a bit of an accent, like an English accent. And I thought that maybe he was saying a regular word that I just wasn't interpreting properly. So I was like, I don't even know what a trisomy is. But your brain actually shuts down when you receive an unexpected diagnosis or you go into shock. And I've learned recently that you can lose up to 40 IQ points when you are in such a state of shock and like overwhelm and upset. It's the same kind of thing as when you're in fight, flight, or freeze mode. Like your brain shuts down to protect itself. So you're physically incapable of absorbing the information. And so, in this particular day when I was receiving this diagnosis, I just felt completely overwhelmed. But I remember feeling the weight of those words, that language, that it felt like it wasn't describing a human being. And as you can see, and you guys might have similar experiences when you're in hospital and things are really scary and medically fragile children, and you end up in really awful situations. And we found ourselves in many situations where Evie's life hung in the balance and we didn't know what was going on. And this particular condition that she had was incredibly rare, so no one seemed to have any answers. And we had so many questions and nothing seemed to be answerable, which was really scary as well. But I found that every time we went through an episode where it was significantly scary, Evie just kind of emerged a little bit braver and stronger, and she drew out in me a mother, a person I never knew I was capable of being. Someone who was brave, who was calm in stressful situations, someone who could be a voice for this tiny little bundle. I'd been quite a shy person my whole life and afraid to have opinions and speak up. But it's incredible how strong you become when you have to be. And I'm hopeful that this is a situation that you've found for yourselves, that you've become people that you can say that you're really proud of because of these beautiful children. But despite all of the first year of Evie's life was really medically scary, she just started to flourish and thrive when she was around 2 years old. And in these images, this is when I really started to notice that she was experiencing the world a little bit differently to other people. So every time we drove to visit family who lived a few hours away from us, we had to drive under a whole lot of electrical pylons. And every time we came up to these pylons, she'd just start crying, or it would wake her up at night time and would pass under the pylons and she'd stop crying. And I just didn't know what it was about this particular piece of road with the pylons that she didn't like. And then I noticed it was happening every time we went through electric sliding doors and anywhere there was an electromagnetic kind of field. And I thought, well, maybe she's feeling this electromagnetic sense in the world. And so I started saying that she had superpowers as a light-hearted way to describe this phenomenon, kind of like a baby Magneto of X-Men or something. I thought that she was quite magical like that, that she could feel things that other people couldn't. And this might seem quite trivial, but for me, this started out as a really light-hearted thing. But when I thought about Evie and her whole character and all the things she was teaching me and those around her, everything about her I elevated, and everything about her became her superpowers, essentially. She couldn't say a single word. She didn't speak, but she could communicate what she needed with me, and I understood her. And the only sound she ever made was ooh, and I knew what she needed based on how she said this word. She had this incredible ability to draw people towards her. She had this purity and a joy about her that people just wanted to be around. She loved being on a beanbag, and she had the most delicious little giggle, and we could make up games together that we played together, and I just loved being around her. I loved being her mum. She never had a tantrum in her whole life, and she's 2.5, which I think was pretty remarkable. And I felt like she allowed us to throw away the book of life. There's so many rules and there's so many things that you feel like you should be doing. And we could just go, oh, we don't even care about that. We're going to live right in the moment and just be completely present and allow Evie to guide us by what she needs and how she wants to exist in the world. But despite this newfound empowerment that I had around superpowers and describing Evie, it was interesting how it showed up in the opposite way. So I would often take Evie to town with me. We'd go shopping or we'd go running errands. And often the first thing people would say to me was, "What's wrong with your child?" When they met her, "What's wrong with her?" You guys might have this experience too. And initially, I'd kind of brace myself for these questions because they're coming. That people are going to stare or they're going to say something dumb. And so, I'd kind of look at that poor stranger and I'd say, well, she has partial trisomy 9 and partial monosomy 6, and she can't walk and she can't talk, and she's got multiple ventricular septal defects and the blah, 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 blah. All of the diagnosis words that you're given, basically. Um, and that poor stranger would look at Evie and then just kind of glaze over as I'm listing all of the big scary words. And then they'd walk away. And I just remember feeling this chasm of fear opening up between us. And I hated it. And I got angry at the stranger. And I think, what a stupid question. I hate these stupid people asking me these stupid things. And I felt like I'd also let Evie down in that moment. Like I hated answering with all of the can't do's and what she couldn't be or do. So, this new language of superpowers gave me a different way of reframing that conversation because they're always going to show up, they're always going to come up. But the next time someone asked me, "What's wrong with your child?" I just said, "Nothing. Nothing is wrong with her. In fact, she has superpowers." And the poor stranger again kind of looked at me a bit strangely. And then they said, "Well, what do you mean?" And then I got to reframe that conversation into all of the things that I loved about my child, all the things that she could do, all the things we did together. And it was beautiful because in that moment I was describing a human being. And because I was describing a human being with very human things that she loved to do, that stranger then saw a human being rather than a collection of failing body parts and big scary words and so there was no chasm of fear. That stranger leaned in and would say things like, "Oh my gosh, she's so cute. Look at her little eyes and her little delicate little fingers. And oh my gosh, what a little poppet she is." And I'd say, "Yeah, I love being her mum. We have so much fun together. And she's an amazing little human." And so the power of language and the power of words is incredible as a transformation tool to help you navigate your future. Because when you're living in uncertainty and fear, all of those medicine words and deficit focused things rob you of ability and hope and the potential of even seeing how amazing your children are. And it's not your fault, it's just the medicalization of our children robs us of being able to celebrate and acknowledge and talk about the joy that we see in them. And, I'm constantly faced with this feeling of empowerment. Like she's so cute. Like I love this photograph. She was so cute, but again, despite the language of superpowers, as a parent, you're constantly forced into that negative framing. Anytime you have to fill in a needs assessment form or anything to do with the NDIS, everything is geared around what your child can't do. And it totally sucks and it wears you down. And I just remember feeling, when I had to fill in this 2-page needs assessment form with all of the questions asking me about my child and what she could do, I couldn't tick a single box. She couldn't do any of the things that she was supposed to be doing. And that form just broke me. And I just remember thinking, I don't want to hand this form in. I don't want to give it to the person at the other end because they'll think that here's a child that has no value, who can't do anything. I mean, has this parent even tried to fill this out? What's going on here? Surely this child doesn't have a return on investment. She's costing the system a lot of money, and I hated that feeling. I felt like all of the questions were wrong. I wanted the person at the other end to know how loved and how valued and how incredible this little person was. But none of the questions that they were asking me gave me an outlet to share any of that. And it's so true often in this parenting world when you are parenting medically complex or rare conditions or autism where so much negativity is surrounding you. You don't even feel like you have permission to share the beautiful things about your kids because there's nobody asking about that. And so my way of responding to this awful needs assessment form was to create my own form alongside the official one. And so basically, I got out my computer and I opened a Word document and I thought of all of the things that Evie could do already and created questions around them that I just put big ticks beside. And I called this form the Evie's Awesomeness form. So it's had a few design iterations since I first made it, but I wanted to share this with you because in writing my own questions of the things that Evie could do and answering yes, I just felt so proud of her and I felt so excited that although none of these things could be measured officially on any official document, I could see that she was growing and developing in her own way. And this piece of paper became the measuring stick that I measured Evie against. I was measuring her against herself, and she was doing brilliantly. And I think so often our children are measured against the elusive normal. And when you measure against normal, that's when so much exclusion can happen. And I think if we can stretch our idea of what normal looks like to be as wide and as flat as possible, then more children will be considered normal, and that will be where inclusion can come from. So some of these questions I know are super random, but they make me so happy, that I'll just read a few out. I know we don't have much time, but that first one, can your child play Sleeping Tiger and other great games? Big tick beside that. This was a game that Evie and I made up together, and so I said this is something she can do. Does your child laugh when objects fall near her face? Yes, I have no idea why she loved that, but she did. And I'll just read that last one at the end there. Can your child do assisted pull-ups holding her head up? Yes, Evie does this very well using her dad to help her. Her record is 13 in a row. What a superstar. Now, if this is actually a tool that I share with families all over the place. And so if you would like to make an awesomeness form for your own child, please reach out to me. I'd love to help support you do that. And maybe, I think, Kelly, we've talked about maybe making a webinar all around this so we can do it together and celebrate our children. So that could be something that we can do together in the future. But if you can't wait until that magical future date, please let me know. Sadly, Evie's life wasn't a long one, but for every single day of the 2.5 years of her life, she was completely compatible with life. It just wasn't for as long as we might have hoped. But in her short, remarkable life, she inspired a dream, which has become her legacy. Essentially, I used to be a wedding and portrait photographer, and so that was my work when Evie was around. And so a few years after she died, I wanted to celebrate other children like Evie, and so I traveled all around New Zealand, meeting other families and other children with genetic and chromosome conditions and celebrating them and their superpowers, essentially. So these two books are a celebration of life and ability, and if you are interested, they're on my website. But I'm going to skip over a few things. because we've only got half an hour and there's so much to say. Like this is something I share a lot. But basically, you will know this. Like there's so much that you want to be able to share about your children and that you never get an opportunity to because of the medicalization of language. This document was given to me after Evie was born, and you might have received some email, some websites, or some documentation where it might not have felt like the most human language or imagery. And I mean, this was given to me and it wasn't written for parents. A lot of the information that you've probably been given isn't for you. It's not written for you. And it does a lot of damage when you try and understand what the heck they're talking about. And then the words used to describe your children or their condition can do a lot of harm. So, I mean, I didn't understand 80% of the words in this document, and I remember the ones that I did were really harmful. You know, it described abnormal skin folds and dysmorphic features and an awful clinicalization of the features I found so beautiful in my child. And none of those words would ever come close to describing the beautiful little poppet that was Evie. And in the years since Evie's died and the work that I now do as a healthcare consultant, where I teach healthcare professionals the impact of their language, especially at diagnosis, I've come to understand how difficult it is for everybody in this space. You know, healthcare providers don't come to work to intentionally cause harm, just like families don't come to hospitals or come to appointments to intentionally be angry and frustrated. That is just what happens when we don't speak the same language or we're not on the same page. And so, this language matrix that I've created helps to kind of unpack different kinds of communication. And you would have probably experienced all of these. So I just want to unpack this for a little bit. So we have these four axes. So the positive, negative, jargon, and informative forms these four quadrants. So we'll start with that positive jargon quadrant. So this is where you get the patronizing, fluffy, almost toxic positivity. So people don't know what to say. And so they often land on a positivity that feels a bit fake. So you might hear things like, special kids are only given to special parents, which sounds like a nice thing to say, but often, I don't know about you guys, I wasn't feeling special a lot of the time. I was feeling overwhelmed, exhausted, petrified, terrified, sleep deprived. Like I just was at my wit's end most of the time. And so then to be called special, it made me feel like I wasn't then allowed to ask for help because I was supposed to be special. Or you get things like, oh, I don't know how you do it. And it's kind of a comment where you're like, well, I don't know what to do with that comment because what am I supposed to do? Like not do it? Like you don't have a choice. You know, that's the thing. So it's kind of like what you hear is, I'm so glad that that's you doing it and not me. And so you get what I'm saying? Like it's kind of this patronizing. I don't know what to say, so I'm going to stick a weird toxic band-aid on it. And it looks like positivity, but it feels like it's not. And it's really alienating and isolating. And even after Evie died, you know, people would say to me, she's in a better place now, as if being right with me in my arms wasn't the best place for Evie, you know. So people just, it's hard to know what to say when big things are going on. And sometimes no words is the best option. And then we have the jargon negative quadrant. And this is where most of the words of medicine, there's 50,000 words, unique words in the medicine language. It is like learning an entire language. Doctors and healthcare providers spend about 7 years learning this new language. And then when you are a parent and you're receiving a new diagnosis and it's clinical medicine language, they're just like blah, 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 all the big words, and you're expected to just know what they mean. And you're in shock and you're getting bombarded with dysmorphic features and, you know, multiple ventricular septal defects and trisomy this and multi blah blah that and all of the things. And you're just like, whoa, 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 whoa. And you can't even think straight. Like, and I don't know how many consultations or clinics you've left the room of going, I don't even know what happened. I don't even know what was said. I couldn't even tell you the next steps. When you don't know, when you're confused, and when you aren't sure about what's going on, how on earth are you supposed to make decisions? How on earth can you ask a question if you have no idea what's being said? And then if you're confused, often you feel really small because there's also a thing that happens with parents that you don't want to waste the healthcare professional's time, and they're often so fast and you're super aware of how little time you have that you want to make the most of it, but also if you don't understand what's going on, how on earth can you ask? It's a really vulnerable space being confused. And I often tell healthcare providers confusion is the thing that wastes so much time in healthcare, not compassionate or kindness. Compassionate care or kindness isn't the thing that wastes time. So I do go into more of this in other webinars, but the resource hopefully will help that. Then we have this negative informative quadrant, and this is language that you understand, but it hurts a little bit. Like it hurts your soul. Like when you read things constantly about your child that they're abnormal or defective, or they're mutated, or they're mentally retarded, these awful medicalized words, or maybe they're incompatible with life, or they're delayed. All of these words that kind of take potential and ability away. Those dehumanizing words. And it hurts you. And I think often we're not aware of the impact that reading these things or hearing these words over and over and over about our children has on our mental well-being and our ability to combat that with a more human way of describing our children. And then we have this shiny yellow quadrant, the positive informative quadrant, which is it's not toxic like the other one, but it's empowering. It's when communication is clear, it's kind, and it's curious. And what I mean by that is that you yourself, as a parent, are asked questions by the healthcare professionals. And I remember the first time I experienced this kind of communication was from a clinical geneticist. And the first thing he asked me when we came into his office was, Rachel, what do you know about chromosomes? And I thought that was a really beautiful way of opening a conversation. And I simply replied, I couldn't even draw you one. I have no idea. I went to art school. I don't know anything about medicine. And so he drew some squiggly little lines. And then within about 10 seconds, I understood kind of what was going on in Evie's body. She had a duplication on a long arm and something else on the short arm. And I had no idea that chromosomes had arms until this moment. And I'd been confused by somebody else in the past. And it was just, I felt so honored that he shared with me information that was really technical and medical, but in a way that I understood. So it's really important that you leave somebody's office or a meeting not more confused than when you went in. Like that's kind of the baseline, right? And so often we're leaving so confused. And so you actually need to be asked questions. And so for the purpose of this webinar, the most important thing that I can share with you is that if you're ever confused or you're feeling like your brain is going to mush and all you can hear is whop whop sounds coming out of somebody's mouth, you can just say, look, whoa, hang on, time out, go back. I am really stressed. This information is really confusing. It's really confronting. I'm trying really hard to hang on to your words, but I need to understand this because this is my life. I am living this. It's okay to tell somebody to stop, to slow down. You need to be asked, have you understood this? Because often you're going to go home and Google things by yourself. And maybe you can even say that outright to the healthcare providers. Look, when I leave here, I'm going to Google this word, and this word, and that thing that you said because I have no idea what you just said. Can you please explain it to me differently? Or I am going to go and Google this. Can you help me find the right places to Google things? Um, those kinds of things. So you need to be asked questions. Oh my gosh, we're already at half an hour, Kelly. I can't even believe this. This is not okay. Like I've got so many things to share.
I know it goes so
What do
quickly.
I
If you
do?
want, you can keep going for the moment. That's all good. It's up to
Okay.
you.
All right, because there's really important things that I needed to tell you. Because
Yeah.
the other time that I experienced this kind of communication was from a surgeon, a pediatric surgeon, when things were really hairy with Evie. And we had to make some really big decisions about whether or not to go ahead with a really invasive intervention, like to basically get a tracheostomy. And we weren't sure at that moment if we wanted to do that. And this incredible surgeon said, look, whatever you decide, you are doing everything for your child. And I know that in this uncertain space, and Kelly and I were talking about this earlier, when there are so many therapies and so many appointments and so much to do, you can be so overwhelmed with all of the options and all of the potential options, and deciding, what if I do this? And is this the right choice? And what about this choice? And what about that choice? And what are the implications of doing this thing and not that thing? So when she said, whatever you decide, you're doing everything for your child. And even if you decide against this treatment, you are doing everything for your child. It makes you not wrong, because we were also talking about parental guilt and, not doing everything. You can feel guilty because you think, well, I'm not doing everything for my child, but sometimes not doing something is just as powerful as doing something, and to give yourself permission to have that voice in your head as well. I don't have to do everything to be doing everything for my child, essentially. Okay, all right. I'm going to stop sharing so we can have a little bit of a chat. I feel like I just went blah, 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 blah at all of you. I'm so sorry. There's so much to share in this space.
Not at
Um,
all. And just listening to you, like I think we've all been there. We've all been that
oh,
person
I
that sat
know.
there and I cannot tell you how many times I was told, oh, but God only gives these children to special parents.
I know, right?
And when you're there and you're on the brink of tears because you've just come out of an appointment and you've been told, your son may never walk or whatever else. There's a lot to take in that moment, and having someone say to you, God only gives you these children to special parents. That's not comforting in that moment, and it really is that toxic positivity of, oh, make the most of this moment. And as parents, we do learn to make the most of our children. And
Of
like
course.
you're talking about Evie and her awesomeness, and I had a little giggle to myself because the little stripy hat she's got on, my daughter is the same age, and she had that exact hat from Pumpkin Patch. So I'm like, oh my goodness.
I
Um,
know. Oh,
yeah, but it's really just, and I think the other thing that came out of that for me is when doctors are working, and I've just actually been doing a lot of reading about this, about compassion. And really, it's not empathy, it's compassion. It's coming from a completely different place. And you always know when you come across those medical professionals who have compassion, because they're very different
yeah,
to the street down the line. Very much that old bedside manner of, this is the diagnosis and this is how we treat it and this is what you have to do. But actually having a conversation with someone and finding out what is going on in their life, what do they
yeah.
know about this, is a huge starter. So yeah.
Definitely, definitely. And there's so much to learn, and especially in this uncertain space. You can feel really small and incredibly vulnerable because it is deeply emotional and terrifying. And when fear is driving a lot of our interactions, we
Mm.
can get so overwhelmed so quickly. And you think, I used to be able to be better at this. Why can't I do the things that I used to be
No.
able to do? It's because you are in a state of PTSD all the time.
Mm.
There are studies around this, like parents who are parents or caregivers of medically fragile or uncertain diagnoses, or, any kind of difference, they live in this constant state of heightened stress. And
Yep.
it gets to you in your cells, in your brain, in
Mm.
your body, and it's not your fault, And so
No.
it's really important to be able to advocate for yourself, to go, wait a minute, stop. I just need less information, or can you explain that
Mm.
differently? And it's not you being stupid, because sometimes you feel like it's you being silly or stupid, and that the healthcare professional is the big person and you just kind of listen and nod and smile. It's like, no, it is your right to have information shared with you in a way that you understand. So
Mm.
even being able to ask them, can I please record this? Because I also need to explain this to my partner or to my family, and
Yeah.
I cannot be responsible for holding all of the knowledge all of the time. It is exhausting because often, and I know there are a lot of mums on here and there's a few dads, and this often someone will be the one who has the brunt of the responsibility, and it is
Yeah.
exhausting. So to be able to share the information with somebody else is vitally important if you're going to be able to cope as best you
Mm.
can. So that's another piece of advice, like get them to write it down, or can I please record this? And if not, then how can I make sure that I'm understanding everything? I don't want to leave here without knowing something, you know. So even being able
Yeah.
to kind of start the conversation with, wait a minute, I'm still learning. I didn't understand that from last time, or this is a real concern for me. Um, I need some help. So I know that, and we're having another webinar in 2 weeks where we will build on what we've talked about today and get really practical with how to advocate for yourself. So having almost scripts of questions that you can go into a session with to go, all right, this is what I need to talk about. Because so often you end up getting derailed by a healthcare professional because they will have an agenda.
Mm.
And all of a sudden, half of your appointment's gone, and you're like, wait a minute, I don't even want to talk about this. I want to talk about that, and
Yeah.
now I've got no time. And nobody's asked you what you care about. So it's about how walking in there with confidence, and with a plan, knowing what you need to know out of that conversation is really empowering, and it just gives you like a next step. Like you need to know what a next step is, especially when there's, like I said, so much uncertainty. Just having one thing to focus on can really help calm that frenetic fear and overwhelm that you are experiencing. Yeah.
Amazing. No, thank you so much, Rachel. I think the questions I had, you just answered anyway.
Oh,
So,
great.
and we haven't had any come up in our chat. We did have one
No, I
person
see
mention,
Tanya's
yes,
comment there. I do have a templatable how to make an awesomeness form resource on my website. So you can either find that, or I can put the website in the chat box, or you can email me and I'll send it to you. Um, it's in the book section, I think, or yeah, it's there,
have a
downloadable
look
section.
around. Yeah,
Have a
if
look
you haven't
around.
been to Rachel's website, it is fantastic. So I do thoroughly recommend you go and have a look, and all her books and everything are there and amazing resources. And she'll be sending out some in our email as well that's coming
Yeah.
after this session.
I'll pop the awesomeness form template in that email as well, so that you'll have it then too. But I hope that I can see you again in 2 weeks' time. And I feel like I just went blah 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 all at you because
No.
I mean there's so much to talk about in this space, and half an hour is definitely not enough time. I wish we could all
So
sit down
true,
together,
but we
but
do
yeah.
appreciate and thank you sincerely for coming along today,
Welcome.
Rachel, and sharing your invaluable knowledge with
You're
us and your
welcome.
expertise. I know I've learnt stuff, and I'm sure the people who are watching currently and are going to be watching the replay will learn so much from that. So, thank you again. Now, just for everyone at home, in the coming days, all registered participants will receive an email containing a link to today's recording session and or session recording rather. We're not music right today. And the presentation slides, some additional resources as mentioned by Rachel during the presentation, and ways, of course, to connect with alongside families and continue the conversation. So you're always welcome to stay connected with us on social media through Facebook and Instagram at Alongside Families. And make sure you subscribe to our newsletter if you haven't already. Now, as Rachel mentioned, she is back here in 2 weeks' time, Monday, the 18th at 12 o'clock. She will be joining us again. And if you haven't already registered for that webinar, I am placing it in the chat right now. And that is, as Rachel mentioned, we will be speaking more about advocacy. So, speaking up in those medical appointments, having some scripting there ready to go that can be really helpful just to have in your back pocket because we've all been there when emotions are high, or you're even having a bit of a difference of opinion about, how to go forward and what the next steps should be. So, any sort of tidbits and strategies that we can have, and having them just there in the back of our mind of like, oh, I remember when Rachel said that, is always really helpful. So
Yeah.
we will hopefully see you all in 2 weeks' time for Rachel's next webinar, which again, I'm very excited about. Um, so please, I hope you all have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you again to Rachel for
You're
joining
welcome.
us. We really do appreciate it. And we look forward to seeing you at future Belongside events. And I hope everybody else has a wonderful day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you
Bye.
so much. Thank you. Bye.